Good day and welcome to the Niche Case Variety Show, where we serve up a smorgasbord of Aotearoa sporting matters to debrief you on a Monday morning. And whenever you want to listen to it, watch it, however you want to consume it, we're here for Aotearoa sport, and we are here to tell you and remind you that Aotearoa is the best sporting nation in the world. Prior to this, we have recorded an extra podcast for our Patreon whānau. So if you are listening to this and you are a member of our Patreon whānau, make sure you check out that podcast on your Patreon feed. And if you are interested in supporting the Niche Case and the Niche Cast and all things funkadelic about Aotearoa sport, head on over to patreon.com/elnichecase, EL Niche Case, and you can support the Niche Case directly. We also have an email newsletter every Monday and Friday. We send that out with extra yarns. For example, I've just done a full Monday morning debrief of Kiwi Sporting Matters on the email, so check that out if you wanna. You can sign up to that. Go to thenichecase.substack.com and whack in your email address, and you get all the Niche Case goodness straight into your email every Monday and Friday evening. And of course, we are always writing about Kiwi sports at theniche-case.com. It is springtime here in Aotearoa, and I want to know what your seed of mindfulness wildcard is sprouting into.
Seed of mindfulness is from old mate Marcus Aurelius, who says, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. That's dyed as in D-Y-E-D as well, rather than the dead version. The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts.
So that's a glorified way of saying that you are your thoughts, and your thoughts impact everything about you, whether it's what is happening within you, your health, your well-being within you, and what you are attracting externally as well. Your thoughts have dyed your soul, thus they create your soul, I guess.
Or reflect, maybe more than create, I don't know. My interpretation is that it's the way that we act influences who we become, and we're the way that we think influences the way that we act, and the way that we think is influenced by our previous thoughts and our previous actions, if that all makes sense. Like it's a product of one's environment, and that environment includes the internal as well as the external. In fact, it probably includes the internal before it gets to the external, which is where the color of our thoughts come into the matter, I suppose, something along those lines.
And if it's springtime here in Aotearoa, we want our souls to be dyed a bit of tie-dye, a bit of, bright yellows, bright sky blues, lime greens, bit of tie-dye action all over the soul. Tie-dye soul. How about that? That is a fucking great start. We're here to tie-dye our souls with Aotearoa sporting goodness. We start our variety show with the most dramatic of hot takes possible. Wildcard, you're up.
Yeah, I don't know how dramatic it is because of the nature of this one. I'm going to have to keep it from being too dramatic from my own personal thoughts on the matter. So, but I have just been thinking about the issue of vaccinations in sport, and specifically in basketball, because a couple of the sort of pillars of Kiwi basketball have been affected by what is a pretty it's an issue that's only really just emerging at the moment. Is how does sports move forward in a world where I don't want to say post COVID, because it's not post COVID, but it's maybe the very first steps of post COVID is when you start getting people vaccinated and stop having to do so many restrictions. So I'm not going to talk about the shoulds and the oughts and the ought tos and all these kind of things. I'm just going to talk about the is of the matter. And week and a bit ago, we saw Ty Webster leave the Breakers because he hasn't been vaccinated, doesn't intend to be vaccinated, and therefore, with the Breakers likely having to spend time, if not certainly the start of the season, will probably have to be in Australia again, likely to be in Melbourne again. Well, Melbourne's just put in restrictions about people who are unvaccinated participating in organized group activities and things like that, which includes sports. So that was a bit of a drama, and therefore he had to step off of his 2-year contract extension that he signed a couple months ago. And then you've got the same drama now. Like that was probably the first instance we've really seen of it down this part of the world anyway. But you've got the same like scenario is starting to pop up. It seems like it's going to be a fairly big issue in the NBA. You had Andrew Wiggins the other day trying to claim religious exemption for not being vaccinated, and I presume he got laughed out of the room when he did that. I don't know, but Kyrie Irving is another name that's being thrown around. There's an article on, I think it was Rolling Stone recently, which got into a lot of this and sort of talked to Kyrie's aunt and people who may know him and trying to speculate on, just because for obvious reasons, he is a person who most people are going to assume is probably unvaccinated. And also someone who, because of his role as like, he's quite high up in the players union. He's like an associate president or something like that. And Chris Paul is the president, isn't he? But Kyrie is like in sort of the people who are the next level down. And the reason those two players in particular have been mixed in is because, you know, Wiggins plays for the Golden State Warriors, which are in California. Kyrie Irving plays for the Brooklyn Nets in New York State. And California and New York State have both put in very similar restrictions about group activities as to what happened, what we've seen in Melbourne. So the same reasons why Ty Webster had to leave the Breakers, we're seeing this start to affect NBA teams now, where like Kyrie Irving potentially might only be able to play away games the way it's going. And Sean Marks did like he did a, what would you call it? Like just a media opportunity thing a couple of days ago. And he was asked about this and he said, well, yeah, like without naming names, look, if the NBA season was starting tomorrow, we would have a couple of guys who would not be available for that reason. Like they haven't had their first vaccinations yet, and probably will not. So yeah, like I say, this is one of those things that just seems to be starting to come into relevance. We don't really, like, it's uncharted territory. You don't really know how it's going to affect sports. And I'm not going to like get preachy about how weird it is that people would put their careers on hold for like the sake of avoiding a needle that most people in that country have already had and with absolutely no dramas. I just think it's interesting to sit back and sort of see how it's going. And the fact that, like, in their own ways, somehow Sean Marks and the Breakers organization are being pushed into a position where they get to be trailblazers in this, like, because it's uncharted territory and they're some of the first to have to deal with how to sort of traverse that uncharted territory. They're just chucked into the mix. I will point out that I suppose this is the hot takeiest part of the hot takey aspect, but I cannot envision a way in which the NBA like goes full on vaccine mandate, like just says everybody has to have both vaccines. I can't see them forcing it like that. The NBL won't. I just think there's too much of the like bottom line at the risk when you start to say like we're going to put a rule in place that means some of our best players may or may not be able to play in a way which kind of publicly shames them for why they're not going to be playing. Whether or not that's fair, I don't know, but it's pretty harsh on the players themselves. I don't think the union would go for that, especially not when you got Kyrie high up in it. But the states themselves and the countries themselves, there's a different matter entirely. And that's what we've seen in all three of those scenarios is, you know, Melbourne, Victoria State, New York State, State of California. They're the ones putting these restrictions in place. Players and teams within those places have to sort of figure this out. And it's just sort of one more like element of why this is a tricky scenario for folks to have to deal with, and how they deal with it is kind of often what you get in these things is like the first people to have to figure it out are the ones who people start to look to. It's like everyone will sit back and say, well, what does that person do when they have to deal with it? We'll just copy what they do so we don't have to put our necks on the line. Well, the Breakers kind of didn't really have a choice in the matter, but Sean Marks has more of a choice in the matter. So after a pretty excellent offseason, which I've talked about in a previous one about how well he's done it at building this team for being able to, like, for the Nets to be able to cope if they do have injuries to their star players. Well, they might have not an injury, but they might certainly have an unavailability to at least one of them. So it's a damn good thing he's got someone like Patty Mills around to help out, assuming he's vaccinated too. And I suspect we'll see Sean Marks's approach might be one of those ones that gets copied by other people. At least, in the very least, those are like whoever else has to deal with this will be able to look at what he did and base their own actions about that. Whereas Sean Marks is making it up on the fly. So one more aspect to just like throw it up and say, I respect the hell of what you're doing, Marksy. Respect the hell out of it, I should say. But wouldn't want to be you right now. It's a tough job. It's a tough gig.
I'm sticking in the chili bin. It's almost summertime. We're staying in the chili bin here for my chili bin take. This fella is back. This guy here, Dan Hooker, he is back. Big win over Nasrat Haqparast yesterday afternoon at UFC 266. It was a massive event for City Kickboxing as well because Alex Volkanovski defended his title shot. And just with some of the logistical travel stuff that has been basically niggly since March 2020, interesting note here, for both Hooker and Alex Volkanovski, you had the same coaching staff. So Eugene Behrman traveled from New Zealand with Hooker. Joe Lopez traveled from Australia with Volkanovski. And then there's a wrestling coach by the name of Frank Hickman, who was already in USA. And they joined forces to corner Hooker and then corner Volkanovski. Dan Hooker won his fight comprehensively. He was coming off 2 losses, lost to Dustin Poirier in a fight that was really good, like a great performance and a loss. Then a loss to Michael Chandler. Hooker regrouped, got back to Aotearoa. All that niggle, all that travel niggle, brushed it off. Typical CKB styles, no dramas. Just pure, let's get the job done, do the mahi, get the treats, and that's what Hooker did. Like he arrived moments, hours, maybe a day before the weigh-in, handled his business, got in there. Stylistically, Hooker controlled the middle for the first round and a half, kept his opponent on the outside, couple of high kicks, and the main thing there with Hooker is just his variety of strikes. He can pick apart his opponent with like jabs, straight right hand, which he did against Haqparast. Then he can throw in kicks, kicks to the front leg, kicks up high. But also, you get him in the clinch, and he embraces the clinch. He loves the clinch. So he'll get into the clinch and then knee your face. And that's what he did multiple times against Haqparast. And then, just to polish it all off, just to finish the fight, he took Haqparast down multiple times, evaded punches, took the single leg, maybe a double leg, I don't know, who cares, but he took him down, ground and pound, control the fight, big dub, big win for Dan Hooker. He is back, and we wait and see what happens next, but he was absolutely clinical and showcased his class in the lightweight division. And I think, just quietly, what Hooker's going to do is he's just going to stay busy picking up fights against guys who might be a bit lower than him in the rankings, or around that, 10 ranking, because Haqparast wasn't ranked very highly, but Hooker wants to fight. Hooker's here to, deal to anyone in the lightweight division, and that's what he did against Haqparast, and that's what he will keep doing, I believe. Vitamin statistic time here, wildcard, where we touch on a key stat that is here to tell a story about Kiwi sports from the last couple of days. What do you got?
I've got a couple of numbers and sequences and such to do with the fellas standing, crouching, whatever, huddling up directly behind me on the, if you're watching on the old videos, video stream. In fact, that right there that he's talking to looks a lot like Gianni Stensnes as well. So Mr. Joe Bell and Mr. Gianni Stensnes at Viking FK in Norway. I just want to highlight this whole scenario that they find themselves in, because I think it's one of the funkiest ones that I've got across all of the Flying Kiwis spectrum right now. You got Stensnes, who's gone into this team after the Olympics and starring for the Ollyweights really there, and pretty much gone straight in as a centre back. He started the last 4 games in a row, and I expect will continue to start pretty much every game. We'll have more on him in a sec, because just preparing these notes, an all-weight squad was announced, and apparently Gianni Stensnes is no longer a New Zealand international prospect. He wants to go back and play for Australia now, which is fair enough. He came here from Australia in the first place. But I won't go into that one quite yet. Joe Bell running the show in midfield as he has been all season. That dynamic duo is doing pretty excellent for this team. They played 2 games this week, actually. They beat Rosenborg 3-1 in the cup to advance to the 3rd round there, and they also drew 2-2 with Mulder in the league. And Joe Bell set up the first goal there, lovely little chip ball to the far post kind of thing, angled run across back in from one of his teammates. That's his 6th assist of the season. He is tied for 4th in the entire Elite Serien for assists there. And this is coming from a dude who plays central defensive midfielder. So for a CDM to be getting the level of assists that are like up there with the wingers and the creative midfielders and stuff is pretty mental. He does, to be fair, take a lot of set pieces. So that's where some of them are coming from. But still, you know, a lot of other people take set pieces too. And Joe Bell's the one chipping away with goals from them, putting them on people's heads where they got to go. The other thing there is like, because those are two big results that they had this season. Mulder are one of the title contenders. Rosenborg are also in the top 3. They knocked one of them out of the cup, drew with another one. And that puts them in a scenario where they're sitting in 6th place with 10 games to go in the season. Top 3 gets to European qualifiers. That like sort of difficult week of playing top teams is not new. This has been going on for like a month or more. 6 of their last 8 games in all competitions have been against the top 4 teams. And they only lost one of them. They did get beaten by Bodo Glimt, who are the defending champions and sitting 9 points ahead of them at the top of the table. However, you know, it's one of those things where you play everyone a certain amount of times. So if you're playing you play everyone twice in this scenario. So if you're playing all these good teams in a row, it means you've got the teams who aren't quite as good coming up afterwards somewhere. Like you still got to play everyone. Like the schedule will even out. And after playing 6 of their last 8 games against top 4 teams, they now have 6 of their last 10 games against bottom half teams. And the only 2 remaining fixtures they have against teams above them are against Lillestrøm and Kristiansund, who are both within 3 points of them. So the teams that they're trying to overtake in order to get to those European spots, they get to play against those teams too, which is exactly what you want. The form they've been in, the way the fixtures are working out, Stenson is holding it down at the back, Bellinho whipping an assist from all angles in the midfield. 9 points is a lot to make up for first place. So probably might want to just like sit that one on the back burner. But top 3 Conference League qualification, absolutely within their reach over the next 2 months. And I'm going to be following that one extremely closely on the old Flying Kiwis, and so will anybody else who's reading it. I don't know if Joe Bell will still be there next season to play that European football should they qualify for it. Nor will he be there next season when they play the next round of the Cup because the Norwegian Cup got delayed because of COVID. So what they ended up doing is they're just playing it across 2 seasons. So they've knocked out one of the best teams to make the next round. They don't actually play that next round until March, which is just before the very next season starts. So again, I don't know if Joe Bell will still be there. He's obviously heavily linked away to Barnsley. It was in the English Championship, and there's plenty of other clubs that are rumored to be interested in him. So whether he is still there come January and the end of this league season, who knows? But at least he'd go out on a hell of a high if he can take them through to some European qualification. That's for sure.
Make sure you follow the Newscase on Twitter, especially where every week there is a new Joe Bell assist out of the mandatory Andrea Pirlo mention here, straight out of the Andreas Pirlo, playbook. That's what Joe Bell does. He's Bellinho, and every week on Twitter there's a new assist highlight from Joe Bell, so do check that out as well. My vitamin statistic this week stems from the White Ferns, who lost their ODI series to England 1-4, 4-1. England won 4 games, Aotearoa won 1 game. The White Ferns are now 2-9 in ODIs this year, which is pretty average coming into a World Cup. They did manage to bowl England out 3 games in a row, so big it up the White Ferns for that. And then they conceded 245 runs for 7 wickets and 347 runs for 5 wickets. So I'm not sure what happened to the whole bowl the opponent thing out, but it disappeared for the last 2 games. But my key statistic here is all about the mums, Amy Satterthwaite and Leah Tahuhu, who are raising a little baby girl, I believe. And this year, they are basically Aotearoa's best cricketers. I'm just going to say it. Could get into the details about T20 versus ODI, whatever the fuck, who cares? But this is just ODI statistics in 2021. The first full year, I believe, since Amy Satterthwaite gave birth to their child. So they've both come back into the team together. This year, they've played a lot more games than they had done previously, last year specifically. And Leah Tahuhu has played 7 games, 12 wickets and an average of 23.75. Amy Satterthwaite has had 11 innings and is averaging a 40.66. So you've got one partner averaging 46 with the bat, 40.66 with the bat. You've got another partner averaging 23 with the ball. I have an imaginary all-rounder stat marker for 30. If you're an all-rounder in cricket, you want to be batting over 30 average, and you want to be averaging below 30 with the ball. That means you're a good bowler and a good batter. Satterthwaite, she averages well over 30 this year. Tahuhu averages well below 30 this year. So they are doing the damn thing, all-rounder styles, as a partnership, as mums. Big it up to them. Deep in the Mangroves now, wildcard. You alluded to it. You've got the All Whites here. Wasn't aware about the Gianni Stenson stuff. Does he want to fuck off back to Australia?
Yeah, pretty much. He, in fairness, he does have a Kiwi dad, which is why he came over to play, I think, at under 20 level first. And he had that one season with the Wellington Phoenix. And there was a dude who's completely lost in the mix. Taki Kumsus, who came over at the same time as him. Both of them had been playing Central Coast Mariners, and they both knew Mark Rudan from Aussie youth level stuff. Both came over to the Phoenix at the same time. Both left after one season. Stensness did play once or twice for the first team, but Stensness went on to make the New Zealand under-20s team for the World Cup in 2018, I think it was. And he was real good there, playing in midfield with Joe Bell, scored a screamer against Norway, which is part of why he ended up playing with Joe Bell over my shoulder there at Viking. And was, I don't know, he got a lot of raps for how well he did at the under-20 World Cup. But I sort of was someone who tended towards saying, like, well, he's playing with Joe Bell, who was New Zealand's best player at that tournament. So I kind of felt like Joe Bell was is the dude who gets most of the hype, and the guy playing next to him is going to look better anyway. But any reservations I had about him, and he had a very good season for Central Coast Mariners last season. But any reservations I had about him were gone after the Olympics, because I thought playing at centre back there, he was fantastic. I thought he's outstanding. One of New Zealand's best players in that Olympic campaign, which was really, like, considering the injuries that Winston Reid had along the way as well. Like, that's not something to shrug off either, because to be excelling at centre back for that team whose best centre back wasn't able to play, and like Michael Boxall wasn't able to join the squad as well. So he, like, if from the very start there was like weaknesses, or not weaknesses, but just like not at full strength as they had planned to be there. And then Stensner steps up and is one of their best players. So, and then he gets to transfer to go sign with Viking and play alongside Joe Bell. So at that point, I'm all in on the Gianni Stensner's bandwagon. And then when the first all-white squad comes along, he decides he's going back to Australia. So I can only assume, and I think it has been confirmed, that he had a bit of a tap on the shoulder. You know how it goes from the Aussies, who maybe don't see him as being in their like squad right now. I wouldn't imagine, but in a year or two, if he continues to do well in Europe, might well be so. And to be fair to him, we see a lot of players in world football, but even just within all whites levels, like in and out. You know, it's a Tyler Boyd thing. Joey Champness gone the other way. He's played youth level for Australia, now playing for New Zealand. So there's scenarios like this, which so it goes. But I find it hard to blame Stensness too much, considering he grew up in Australia, played all his football except for 1 year in Australia. It's like he's a lot more Australian than he is Kiwi. It was cool. Would have been great having him around with the All Whites, but at the same time, so it goes. Did have some other notes I'll chuck out on that All White squad though. 21 players named to face Curacao, which is how you say it. I've checked out. It's I thought it was whatever. It's Curacao. and Bahrain in 2 weeks' time. Overseas players only, no New Zealanders or Australian pros, but still a stacked squad, which is lovely to see. Two names who are missing are Ryan Thomas and Winston Reid, both been struggling with injuries for a fair while. Not sure entirely what's up with Tomo, but I know he wasn't going to go to the Olympics to sort of focus on his club career. He's just trying to nail things down at PSV right now. Winston Reid, I'd imagine, just isn't fit yet after the Olympics and the injury he got there. But he, this is the Stensness thing is what everyone's talking about. But I think the most underrated factor of this all-white squad is that Winston Reid, unfit to play, is still traveling with the squad in a non-playing capacity. I reckon that is some those are some high mana areas right there. That's top quality from Winston. Where are we? The Stensness stuff I've got written down, already said that. 6 uncapped players: Joey Champness, Nico Kerwin, son of John Kerwin. I believe he's been in an all-white squad before, but hasn't played yet. Dalton Wilkins is one, currently out on loan, but is a teammate of Callum McCowart, Elijah Just at Helsingør. Where are we? Matty Garbutt is another one. I'm confused there because my notepad auto changed it to Garnett, and I was thinking Kevin Garnett. He's not an all-white, is Marko Stamenic, another guy who would have played by now had he not had the all-whites been a team that played games at any point. And the other one is the real bolter in the squad, Calvin Kalua, who is he played for Eastern Suburbs the last several years. He's a fullback, can play a bit of centre back. Very good player, like one of the better players at that level. Didn't see this coming though. I think it's definitely a bit of an opportunistic thing. He apparently is over in Europe at the moment, which is why he's eligible. Trialing with the Ole Academy guys. He's not an Ole Academy guy. He came up through the Eastern Suburbs Academy, but obviously played with a lot of them for Eastern Suburbs and when they overlapped. So there's that. Cool for Kalua. 5 players in the squad of 21 with more than 6 caps. It's very inexperienced, but I think considering that obviously doesn't include the Olympic tenure, and also I think just the fact that the All Whites have played so few games for the last what was it, 2 games in about 3 years. I think that's more the factor to why the squad has so few caps. It's not so much that these players, they would have got the caps had their big games to play. And yeah, all the other big guns are there. Chris Wood, Sarpreet Singh, Joe Bell, Michael Boxall, Bill Tuiloma, both Boxalls actually. Libby Kakache's there, Tommy Smith's there. They're all there. Should be good. Can't wait. And one last note on that is I'll chuck out that Eastern Suburbs team that won the premiership a couple of years ago. 6 starters from that squad in this. 6 starters from that team are in this squad. So not a coincidence considering that Danny Hay coaches both of them. But there you go. There's the slippery bit there is not some like that. We put it that way. It makes it sound like Danny Hay's just picking his friends. But this is a squad of entirely non-New Zealand-based players. So it's more to the point that 6 players from that championship team are now playing overseas in some capacity and eligible to be selected for an overseas-only all-white squad, which is crazy.
A couple of Nikos in there as well. Nico Boxall, Nico
Kerwin. 2 of them.
Big moment for all the Nikos in Aotearoa football.
Spelled differently, though. It's always a tricky one with flying Kiwis. You've got to remember Nico Kerwin is 1K and Nico Boxall is 2Ks.
Could go with the C, could go with the good Awara Nico. There's
there you go.
Variations of the theme. My Deep in the Mangroves is NRL Finals footy. So the Rabbitohs won. They defeated the Seagulls. Panthers won. They defeated the Storm. And it's just kind of, I had to go deep in the mangroves because I had to go deep in my emotional mangroves to figure out how I felt about the whole thing. We've been on the roller coaster with the Seagulls. They were shit against the Storm. They were good against the Roosters, and they were pretty shit against the Rabbitohs. So that was 3 weeks of just up and down Seagulls footy. It was weird. It was like, I've been big on the Morgan Harper train, but he couldn't, find the right high of that roller coaster at the right time. But to be honest, in fairness to Morgan Harper, he was just in tune with the whole Seagulls team because everyone was shit round 1 of the finals, good round 2, and then shit against the Rabbitohs. Then we had the Storm playing probably the worst Storm game that I can ever remember. But some of those worst Storm games, just thinking about it, did come against the Warriors. So it was like, the only way the Warriors can win this game is if the Storm suck. And then the Warriors would win those games somehow. So credit to the Warriors for finding that chink in the Storm armor previously. But that's what came to mind when I was thinking, like, have the Storm been this shit before? Yes. When they've lost to the Warriors a few times. And it has happened. But they were pretty mediocre against the Panthers. Brandon Smith, he had to leave the field early. Concussion issues. He did get a 20-40 kick, I believe, which I was hoping would be a sign of things to come. But then the Storm just kept coughing up possession and making mistakes. But it was a hearty, gritty performance from the Storm lads. The Bromwich brothers were physical, did their jobs. Asafa Salamona tried to do everything and had a great no-try swan dive, which was excellent. Jerome Hughes looked like he had fought Dan Hooker. Like, he had just cuts like everywhere on his face. It was a very hearty, moldy order type of game from the Storm, but the Panthers were too good. But then the Panthers were too good and Fisher Harris has a knee injury. So it's a bit like, oh, I want the Panthers to be, well, I like the Panthers because of Fisher Harris. One of the best middle forwards in the whole competition from Northland, Hokianga region to be specific. But then he suffered a knee injury. So that's a bit like, oh, will we get Fisher Harris in the grand final? I don't know. He's kind of holding it down for Aotearoa in that Panthers team. Then we have the fairy tale Benji Marshall section of the Kiwi-NRL finals, where he is back in a grand final, which is excellent. Against the Sea Eagles, Benji Marshall played 29 minutes, I believe, off the bench, had a try assist, a little bit of playmaking. And the thing I'd say now, early in the week ahead of grand final footy, no other team has a Benji Marshall role. There's plenty of other teams, like you look at like Melbourne Storm, bringing Brandon Smith off the bench. They might come in with a fast, agile middle forward. Benji Marshall comes off the bench specifically as a playmaker, as a ball player, and then he'll defend out on the edge next to Adam Reynolds. So Benji Marshall is absolutely shining in that role, limited role as it is. And then Jackson Paulo, I believe, scored 2 tries for the Rabbitohs. Northcote Tigers Jr. having a nice little finals run himself. So we've got the whole fairy tale Benji situation is fantastic, and it is so overarching that it leads everything Kiwi-NRL this week. Got a, bit of angst. Will Fisher Harris play or not? That's one to keep an eye on. And we've got the 2 teams with really good, high quality Kiwi-NRL numbers just weren't good enough in those games. And as frustrating as it was, as down buzz as it was, at least we still got Benji. We still got the Benji fairy tale. Hopefully we get Fisher Harris, and hopefully we get Jackson Paulo on the wing as well for the Bunnies. And I believe you've got a question related to that wild card.
Yeah, on that note, I might as well go straight into this. My question is not actually a question, it's a little more of a prompt, but give me 3 reasons why Benji Marshall is the GOAT, the greatest of all time from the Kiwi-NRL scene.
The first is like his skill as a footy player. Like I don't know if he single-handedly changed the way footy was played, but he added a twist to how rugby league is played. And I don't know if there's anyone more responsible for inspiring a generation from either country, Australia or New Zealand, than Benji Marshall. And that is based on his skill, his attributes as a footy player. And that makes him the GOAT, easy. Then you've got this later period of Benji Marshall's career where We all know the infamous Auckland Blues stage of his career, which was excellent. Fuck. I just had a moment where I was thinking, who will be a better Auckland Blues player, Benji Marshall or Roger Tuivasa-Sheck? And that sounds like a null and void question in Tuivasa-Sheck's favor. Tuivasa-Sheck still hasn't played a game of rugby yet. And maybe the gods just don't want Tuivasa-Sheck playing any rugby union, so keep that in mind. But what Benji Marshall is doing right now with the Rabbitohs goes back to what he was doing with the Dragons when he returned to rugby league, with the Broncos when he returned to rugby league, and kind of had some of this at the Tigers, where this version of Benji Marshall just wants to do whatever the team needs. So he's kind of doing what he did with the Broncos, because he went up to the Broncos and Wayne Bennett was coaching, and he was just like, I just want to be here. Second string half, backup half, it's all good. I'm just here to be a part of a good club under the great coach Wayne Bennett. And right now, Benji Marshall was coming off the bench for the Rabbitohs, doing whatever is required for his team. So you've got like all-time skill level, and through that all-time skill level, inspiring a generation. At the same time, you've got the humble Kiwi, who is so just like in tune with being a fantastic Aotearoa athlete, where he knows that it's team first. He knows that he's not bigger than any team, and he knows like Benji Marshall is basically doing an All Blacks type thing, where he's putting himself at the bottom of the like priority list here. He's not at the Rabbitohs for salary. He's not at the Rabbitohs for game time. He is at the Rabbitohs to help that team win, and whatever needs to be done for his team, which is 2 reasons. The third thing I wrote down here was co-matua status, but that's kind of just like the icing on the cake of the last 2 reasons. So I'm not sure if there's a third reason. Longevity has to be a factor. Definitely has to be a factor. And I don't want Benji Marshall to retire, because I want Benji Marshall to be Tom Brady, like the Kiwi Tom Brady, who just goes and goes and goes. And as long as there's a role and he's with the right coach, I don't see why he shouldn't keep going. He's not going to play 25 games a year, 80 minutes a game, making 20 tackles a game. Like, that's rough on Benji Marshall. You're not getting the best out of Benji Marshall. In the right situation, I think he could be the Kiwi-NRL Tom Brady and go a couple more years, but I think that's unlikely. But longevity is still a massive factor. So I've got all-time skill level, ultimate humble Kiwi vibe, and longevity. Well, obviously, all 3 are intertwined with each other. So, yep, those are my 3 reasons why Benji Marshall is the Kiwi-NRL GOAT. I've got one question for you here, Wildcard. And I'm not sure if you've been keeping up with this. I'm not sure if you've been tuning in. Kyle Jamieson, famed New Zealand seam bowler of the last year, 2 years maybe.
Year and a half, somewhere.
Kyle Jamieson's the GOAT of the last 2 years for the Black Caps. So shout out to him. Fantastic run. Hopefully that run is not over, but I'm curious here, Wildcard, based on this following note, where Kyle Jamieson has taken 1 wicket in 8 games of cricket since the World Test Championship final. Those are all T20 games, T20 Blast and IPL. 2 IPL games. What did I say? 8 games. So two IPL games, 1 county championship game, just a random one chucking in there, and 5 T20 Blast games, 1 wicket, 8 games, T20 World Cup coming up. Are you worried about Kyle Jamieson in any way?
No, I would say that I'm not. For 2 main reasons. I think one is that we have seen him, well, I'll flip them the other way around. the one that was going to be second, but is now first, is that I don't think he's actually in the Black Caps' first 11 2020 team. I'm sure he'll get a game or two at the World Cup, but I just don't think you're picking him ahead of Trent Bolt or Tim Southee or whatever. And in conditions where you're gonna want, and Lockie Ferguson as well, he's bowling absolute heat at the IPL. So I saw a tweet that he'd bowled the fastest delivery of the season, which I assume counts the season before they restarted as well. I don't know though. In spinning conditions in the UAE, where you're going to be picking you're already going to be picking Sodhi and Santner, there's a high chance that they pick either Todd Astle or they ask like Phillips, Chapman, etc. to bowl decent overs. I just don't think there's room for Kyle Jamieson when he hasn't really done this at T20 level anyway. And this is point number 2, which is that he did struggle in 2020s against India in the home summer, and he hasn't. He's the last couple years he's absolutely shredded the domestic scene in every format, but internationally he's only fully like the whole thing about the like Kyle Jamieson's big emergence and everything, and like culminating in a just like straight up man of the match level performance and at the, what do you call them, in the World Test Championship final. Like that was all test match. Like all the stuff about Kyle, if you took out his like, let's chuck in the Guptill syndrome thing again. Like if you take out his test match figures, which are still incredible, and he's gone past the point where it's like, oh, he's only played a couple games, so it's not really like he's played, I don't know, 8 or 9 tests, and he's still averaging like less than 15 or whatever it is. At that point, that's not just like a good couple tests. That's doing that over multiple series in multiple countries. Like it's still not enough where you can say like, on the basis of this, he's the greatest bowler of all time, which is what those stats would otherwise say. But it's more than enough to say it's some kind of fluke or something. But it's long format stuff. And his like the bounce that he gets, like the deceptive bounce that he gets from his height, that works so well, allowing him to bowl a little bit of a fuller line and longer format stuff with the red ball. Not as valuable in the white ball when guys are just swinging at it and can get under you and sort of put you over the fence. So not worried about him because he's not an avant-garde test specialist. He's good enough to be an all-format player. I just don't know he's quite first 11 in T20. So I think at this stage, a little bit concerning. You want to see him taking more wickets. You want to see Kiwi bowlers playing in overseas competitions doing well and being successful. But I think it's relatively low stakes for Kyle Jamieson, the fact that he is on a little bit of a down stretch. And I think it's not as out of character as it seems, considering we're talking, is it exclusively T20s, or has he snuck in some not ODIs, but one day is in England as well? I don't know, but
there was one county game.
Right. Well, one county game is a little bit more concerning because you'd hope that's because of his format, but anyone can have one off day. I'm not too worried about Kyle Jamieson. You might be though.
No, I'm just curious. So you don't have Jamieson in your first 11 T20 Black Caps team?
Not at the World Cup.
You got
maybe for a game in New Zealand.
You going with Todd Astle in that all-rounder spot?
I wouldn't, but I think they will. In which case, that's the spot that Jamieson would otherwise play. So it's probably as simple as that. Do you actually think Todd Astle's
going to be first 11 T20 World Cup?
I don't think he should, but after seeing what Ajaz Patel did against Bangladesh, I think they probably feel like they either need or will benefit from a third spinner. But I don't know. They might use the first few games to see it. I don't know.
I was just thinking, because I've actually thought about this, just like we'll wrap this up here, but like the variety of the Black Caps bowling attack, I think is something that we should note down. Ferguson's bowling heat and he's bowling in swing. Jamieson's got his whole package. Trent Bolt, lefty, he's got his package. Adam Milne is his own unique type of bowler, but he's not even in the squad, so that's all good.
Well, Southee, 16th man, but yeah.
Yeah, Southee is, just a bit of variety, outswing. So they're all seam bowlers, but they all have a bit of something slightly different to the other bowler. And for some, Kiwi cricket has never really had X factor seam bowlers, and when we have, we go pretty well. Shane Bond. Usually we end up with non X factor seamers though. So let's keep moving to music. I got a couple. I'm sticking with the Aotearoa jams here, Wildcard, for these recommendations on the variety show. Just a glorious Aotearoa music. We got a new song from Balu Brigada, Balu Brigada, number 1, absolute jam. We got a new song by this dude LB, all caps when you spell my name, LB, Home Sweet Home. Bit of hip hop there from LB, kind of the slow Earl Sweatshirty type of stuff again, but from a New Zealand artist. And he does have a couple of Warriors references in that Home Sweet Home track that do go hard. And then there's a new song from Leaping Tiger, Gooey, which is a funky kind of synthy, boomy, bappy thing, but it just sounds good. Sounds good for my soul, and we are here to tie-dye the soul. Any musical recommendations from yourself, Wildcard?
Yeah, I had nothing local this week, but there's a new album out by Illuminati Hotties, which is definitely pumped for that one. I don't know if I'd quite call that band sort of a one-woman band, but still, I don't know if I quite call them like in that sort of pop punk kind of thing, but it's something adjacent to that. Like there's a bit of a revival, or so I'm told, of sort of pop punk in the charts. Olivia Rodrigo and that Machine Gun fella are apparently both trying to make like choppy guitar-y albums, and this isn't that, but this is the kind of thing that those people are trying to borrow from to do what they do. So I think there's yeah, definitely. Well, yeah, I'm just looking forward to that album. Charlie Crockett's got a new one. I haven't heard it yet, but he's sort of in the kind of country folk troubadour type realms, always interested to hear what he does. And he's a very prolific fella. I think he's already done an album earlier this year. So looking forward to that one too. And then also people keep saying how good the new Low album is. So I've heard a couple songs from it and decent enough. We'll see if it tickles my fancy even more when I listen to it more thoroughly through. They're like sort of, I don't know if pioneer is the right word, but sort of let's just check out like superstars of the old shoegaze genre, which is somewhere between like grunge and emo, and but at half the pace. I don't know quite how to describe it, but like My Bloody Valentine and that kind of thing. Lower, I don't need to just. Lower, one of the premier bands of that scene, so I don't need to describe other bands to describe them. They are it. But yeah, we'll see how that one goes as well.
Like half-paced emo music just sounds fantastic. I would happily absorb half-paced emo music.
There you go. Shoegaze is such a nice, like, I just like that name for a genre. It's real evocative, eh? Like it says all you need to know. It's like music to drop your head to. Stare at your feet as you go along.
Yeah, don't. All I'm thinking about now is that Di Henwood show, insert video here, I think it was. And he had a segment, like it was like Finding Nemo, but it was Finding Emo. And he'd walk on the streets of like Auckland and then find some emo kids to fucking talk to. It's pretty funny. It's always worth a laugh. Shout out to all the emos and anyone who listens to slow down emo music, I guess. Not me. Prefer a bit of, Aotearoa style.
Not yet, anyway.
Hopefully never. Let's be honest. Or I might go through my emo phase when I'm 55. Who knows?
Yeah, well.
A little bit of My Chemical Romance and platform shoes and just like skinny jeans.
Yeah, I can't even think of that many other bands that fit that sort of, I don't know. There was Panic at the Disco. Simple Plan. Yeah, well, they were sort of on they were a little more of the pop punky type thing, good, like somewhere on that borderline between those two that I started off talking about, like Blink 182 kind of thing.
Yeah, it was a
But
bit
not
before
quite. They were
emo.
like a bridge between that. Yeah.
Shout out to Hoobastank as well. That was a good one. Old Hoobastank, The Reason.
Yeah, that one song.
That's a one
There's
song.
nothing wrong with being a one hit wonder. If you one hit wonder, you get all the like. If you can retire on like that one song that you made, you're doing all right. Like, spend the rest of your life just painting.
If you're getting checks
whatever you
every
want,
month
living in the
on your
hills.
royalties and whatnot, then
Yeah.
hey, you made one song that was big enough. Shout out to what's that dude? We've talked about this before. The guy on the bike and he's riding through Robin Thicke.
Oh, Robin, yeah.
The first
He had
Robin
two
Thicke
one.
song.
He's the rarest of cases. He had two one hit wonders. Like he was a one hit wonder, and then he reinvented himself and was a one hit wonder again.
But shout out to the first Robin Thicke. That's Robin.
The first
Thicke
one
we
is
really
way
fuck
better
with.
song. Yeah, when
That's
he's like
fan.
so he's like a delivery man on a bike edge, like cycling through New York City and dancing against doors and stuff. It's like if you saw that, you wouldn't think. I think this is why we've talked about it before. Is you see that you wouldn't think it's the same dude. Like he's just some other
Definitely,
guy.
yeah. Definitely don't go blurred lines, Robin Thicke right there. That's it. That's the one. Pick it up. We'll wrap it up there.
There
Kia
we go.
kaha. Stay beautiful. And cheer to everyone.